Hello, everybody, and welcome to Creating Conscious Relationships. I'm Catherine,
And I'm Jon.
and tonight's topic of conversation is all about embracing the divine masculine and feminine within ourselves to create better relationships, both within ourselves and with our significant others and other relationships that we have. Yes. I'm just going to make sure that we are live, so
Alrighty, get to it. I hope everybody's having a great weekend, and don't forget to comment or send in questions. And we want this to be a conversation with everyone. So by all means, be a part. We can sit here and talk as much as we want, but we really would like to hear from you as well.
So, talking about divine masculine and divine feminine, and what does that even look like, and how can you bring it into relationship, first for yourself, but then to implement that into relationships with those around you. And to us, I think we've done a lot of exploration over the past year around divine masculine, divine feminine, what that looks like to us, and even just trying to understand, what does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean to be masculine? And what we've discovered is it's so much deeper than just a male body and a female body, or what society has told us about being a man or being a woman, and what those roles have looked like throughout history, and what those roles continue to be nowadays. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole dynamic, right? It's not just what we know as the masculine and feminine. Because what we know as masculine and feminine is very surface level. Or what we've been taught is very surface level.
Yes. Yes.
And I think the divine masculine and divine feminine goes a little deeper than that. And it's more encompassing of both male and female.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when we're talking about divine masculine, when we're talking about divine feminine, as you said, it is so much more than this kind of surface level. So like, a man is strong, a woman is emotional. I'm trying to think of some of the stereotypes that we've bought into in the past of what these look like.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, that men are supposed to be a certain way and women are supposed to be a certain way. And I think things are getting better in those teachings. But I mean, that's still what's ingrained in us, is that you have to fit this way, or you have to be this way, depending on what your gender is.
Yeah. And when it comes to the divine masculine and divine feminine, it really starts within, because each of us, whether we're in a male body or a female body, each of us has the energy of the divine masculine and the divine feminine within us. And it's important that we find a sense of balance within ourselves first, before we start to require that from someone else. There's a lot of pressure, I think, that we put into relationships automatically based on what gender roles have been throughout history. And so we might demand that, a man be strong and a man be capable of building things, or be the one who goes to work and makes some money and whatnot. And these are all part of those old kind of dichotomies that have been taught to us, but are not necessarily in our highest, where the feminine roles or female roles throughout history have been, you have to be the nurturer, you have to be the mother, you have to be subservient to the man, you have to be almost meek and mild and, just stay calm and whatnot. And what we know about women throughout history is they don't tend to be calm and meek and mild, that they've got a lot to say, they've got a lot to express, and that men can't always be strong, that men can't always be, this kind of hardened, toughened person, even though this is what has been driven to us and told to us about who we are. And so as we've explored this past year, we really had to get in touch with what does it mean to be feminine within the body, what does it mean to be masculine within the body. And so we're going to be sharing with you guys kind of some of the things that we've discovered and come across and have started to understand about ourselves. And I think one of the greatest aspects that I've learned is that if you can imagine that the mind is the masculine and the heart is the feminine, and they both have a very important role to play within our lives. So the heart will often kind of be inspired. It has a new idea. It has this thing it wants to explore. And so it goes, hey, let's do this thing. Let's, whatever the thing might be, let's dance. Let's
paint,
create.
let's whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And the mind, if it's not in that kind of divine aspect, if it's, say, a wounded aspect of the mind, it might go, we don't know how to create. We don't know how to dance. We don't know. It's not going to look good, whatever. And so it pushes that heart down. Okay. And then the heart has to just kind of, okay, well, I guess we're not going to paint, even though I really want to. But because the mind is in control, it keeps pushing down what the heart is trying to say. So the mind, if it's in a healthy spot, if it's in that kind of divine masculine, it can actually create the structure for the heart to be able to express itself. So the mind might go, okay, I'll get some canvases then, and I'll get some paint, and I'll, we'll set this time aside, and during this time we're going to paint. That's the masculine energy creating the structure so that the heart can then express itself, the feminine can then express itself. And so each of us has this within us, where we've got what our heart is wanting and what our mind is actually allowing us to create from what it is our heart is wanting, if this makes sense to everybody.
And I think, our discovery and going through this process and process of discovery, it all goes back to communication. Like, when the biggest thing that men and women struggle with is, we're so different. We don't know, when we communicate, you communicate this way and I communicate that way. And that kind of that is where it all starts, right? Is, okay, well, why is that? And once you start breaking down those barriers and start incorporating or start blending the masculine and feminine, you start to understand they're actually speaking the same language.
Yeah.
That we're not different. We're not any, we can't understand women or we can't understand men. No, we can. We just need to remove or modify what we know and evolve.
Yeah, and a huge piece of that is kind of listening to that conversation that's happening within yourself or happening in partnership. So when the heart's speaking up, the mind needs to listen, pay attention. The heart's not attacking the mind. The heart's just simply saying, hey, this is something I want to express. And then the mind, it might have some yeah buts that kind of show up and say, well, we can't do that, or we have to wait until Wednesday, or whatever it might be. But it's still going to take that lead and go, I'll get you all the things that need to happen for this to happen. In relationship, it can look very much like that. Maybe the woman is saying, hey, this is something that we need to incorporate into our relationship. This is something that we need to bring forward. And then the man of the relationship can go, okay, so let's figure out a way for us to be able to bring that forward, for us to be able to do this. Now, one thing that we had, I guess, watched a video a while ago was that for a lot of the masculine, that there's a feeling of never being good enough. And so when the masculine is not feeling good enough, or has like a deep-rooted fear of not being good enough, and the feminine speaks up and it says, hey, I want to tap into this thing, and there's this calling that I have, or whatever, the mind or the masculine can hear that and go, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm still not making this part happy. But on the other side of that, the feminine or the heart, it has a potential to connect in with everything that's available to it. And So when you think that the heart is connected to all of the infinite possibilities within the universe, even when all measures have been met, even, it's say the heart said I wanted to paint, and then you painted, and then maybe the heart's going, I want to paint more. I want to paint a whole mural. It's not saying to the brain, hey, you didn't do enough. It's just saying, hey, now there's something more that's wanting to be expressed. And it's very much the same within relationships, that the female, historically, um, tends to have the desires that come up of, hey, I want this in the relationship, or we need to try this, or this is feeling a little bit off, or whatever, where the men might hear that and they might go, I'm not doing enough. But that's not actually what's happening. It's that the woman's tapping into this kind of potential that's available within the relationship. So understanding that conversation between the brain and the heart, but also between the man and the woman, that it just needs to be a conversation. It doesn't have to be like a wrong.
No, absolutely. And the way, or my analogy, the way I looked at it, the way I put it was, think of it as everybody has a cell phone. The masculine is the structure. The masculine is the phone. It is important because without the structure, without the thing, you don't have anything. And the feminine would be all of the content. Everything that goes into that is the feminine. So you have to have the two to be able to have whatever, you have your image on your phone, or you have to have both, and both are equally important. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
And both have to know that each are important to exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of talk right now about the divine feminine needing to rise, and the divine feminine needing to awaken, and what does that look like, and how do we really bring that forward. And I think a lot of people have been thinking very much about like the male and female kind of roles, and going, how are women supposed to be empowered, or how can women become more empowered? And just an invitation to anybody who's watching right now, that instead of looking at it as a male female kind of thing, look at it as a heart and mind kind of thing, that what's actually needing to be awakened right now is that connection with the heart. And there's so many people, I think, throughout the world that we've disconnected from our hearts. We've allowed the mind, the masculine, to just run and run and run, without allowing ourselves to truly listen to what it is our hearts are wanting to express, that our hearts are wanting to do, that our hearts are wanting to create in this world. And when we give ourselves a chance to actually connect within and listen to what our heart is trying to say, this is how we bring back that feminine.
Yeah. And I think it's that point where the feminine realizes or understands the masculine, the structure, but starts to deviate away from being the feminine. So sees the structure, knows the structure, and it's like, oh, I can be the structure and I can be the content. And it's like, no, you need to realize the structure and the content exist, but you need to play your part as I need to play my part. We need to provide, we need to support each other in that, right?
Yeah.
I need to know that you're the content. I need to go, hey, you need to do this. And you need to say to me, hey, you're the structure. You need to do this. And these are what our roles are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that people get too caught up or too detached from, oh, this is the structure. I'm going to be the structure too. Instead of going, okay, I have this realization that this is what it is, that the masculine is the structure. Okay, now I can go back to creating the content. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where some of this, sometimes people get astray or whatever, or off path, is because they realize it and go, I can do everything. Well, we can't. We need to have that balance.
Yeah. 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 The heart needs to feed the mind, and the mind needs to provide for the heart. The feminine needs to feed the masculine, and the masculine needs to provide for the feminine.
And another thing is, and don't get us wrong, it is not you're the feminine needs to provide. She may provide the structure. I may provide the content. It's not what you see is this is feminine, this is masculine. This can be feminine, this can be masculine.
Yeah.
It is not this what we've been told.
Yeah, it's not about being in a man body or a woman body.
It's not a hard set. Oh, this is how it has to be from 0 to the time you pass on. It is what it is in that instance, or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And it could be years, it could be weeks, could be days, could be seconds.
Yeah. And I think that it gets to be a bit of a confusing part for people, because there has been such gender roles that have been in place as like strongholds for so long. And so when we start to think about the divine masculine, the divine feminine, we automatically start to think of those gender roles. And it has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with these two aspects within ourselves. And when you can connect with both those aspects within yourself, and bring that and understand that when you're talking to anybody, whether it's your partner, your children, your parents, your friends, whatever, that there's these different energies that are coming up. Some are feminine, some are masculine, and we need those energies to dance with each other, some creating the content, some creating the structure, in order for change to really take place, in order for people to feel supported, in order for people to feel a sense of safety when they're tapping into either. Because I think for a lot of people as well, when we think of how we've been kind of indoctrinated into what these gender roles are and what that means for us as women, what that means for us as men, it has really burnt a lot of people out. Right? Where I think especially for men, because there's been so much pressure for men to be strong, to be disconnected from their hearts, to just go. And when a woman can actually offer that safety or that structure for a man to go into his heart and to tap into that feminine energy and allow that content to be expressed, I feel like it just takes a weight of, like a load of weight off of a man's shoulders.
Well, absolutely. And I think that a lot of the pressures that have been put upon people in general, male or female, they've caused some of the, some of the worst things, some of the worst anxieties and this, that, because you're not living up to this, when it's like, you're living up to everything that you need to live up to. You just don't understand the dynamic that you're working in.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you can tap into what that energy is for yourself, what the divine feminine, like tap into your heart. What is your heart wanting to express? That's that divine feminine that's wanting to come alive inside of you. And listen to it with the mind, with the masculine, and not putting yourself down, not pressuring yourself, not listening. It's so interesting to me because I work with a lot of people who are in relationships, and there's a lot of struggle within those relationships, and even things like, oh, he never listens to me, he doesn't provide a safe space, he does X, Y, and Z, whatever it might be. And then really ask yourself, okay, does your mind listen to your heart? Does your mind create a safe space for your heart to be able to express itself? Because if it doesn't, then you can start with that for yourself, to become that for yourself. And not that this shouldn't be happening within relationships, but again, to me, it's most empowering when you can start those relationships within yourself, that you're listening, that you're paying attention to what your heart is saying, that you're letting your mind create that structure for your heart. To me, it becomes a much more empowering kind of relationship.
Well, and I think it has to start with you, right? I think it has to start with you having that understanding and knowing and really being curious about the divine masculine and feminine within yourself before you go and have a conversation with your partner, before you start reaching out to other individuals or whatever. It's really diving into yourself and realizing and recognizing those two pieces.
Yeah.
And how that harmony really has to be. And then you'll start to see that how that harmony works with other people, your partners, your family, friends, coworkers, whatever. You'll start to understand there that all plays out across all those relationships.
Yeah.
You'll start to see where the divine masculine or the divine feminine comes up in each individual.
Yeah. And then the other aspect of that is, I mean, the duality of, if it's not the divine feminine, then it's the wounded feminine. If it's not the divine masculine, it's the wounded masculine. And that has a very different look to it. The divine feminine often is able to express herself. She's able to, be loud and be bold and really create in this world, where the wounded feminine, she's loud, but nobody's hearing her. She's screaming out this kind of rage, this pain and whatever. And when you look back through like spiritual texts and religious texts and stuff like that, it's a lot of the goddesses were, said to be bad because they would create destruction, And if you think of your heart, when it's been heartbroken, when you're filled with anger, you're filled with rage or whatever, you often will create destruction with your words, and you'll be expressing all the wrong things. And that's that wounded feminine that's just speaking and trying to get all of that pain out. But if the brain or the mind, the masculine, can create that space for her to be able to express and, give her storm out as wildly as she needs to, but just go, okay, I've got you. You're safe. Like, we're going to get through this or whatever. Then that wounded feminine can actually start to relax. And the same with the wounded masculine. Sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. Well, I was going to say the wounded masculine will never show emotion. And the wounded masculine will do. And the only time you're going to see any type of emotion is it's going to be like that whole peak of bipolar. It's like you're going to see anger or you're going to see extreme sad. And those are about the only thing you're going to see in a wounded masculine. When it comes to emotions, they're going to continue to do the things that they do, la la la, but they're never going to be opened up. They're never going to express themselves properly because they're in that wounded state. Now, a divine masculine person or that divine masculine coming out, they're going to feel that there's that balance. There's that freedom to express themselves however they want to express themselves. And the communication conversations are endless and they just flow. There's nothing that is taboo or nothing that you're worried to have that conversation about or whatnot, because you feel that protectedness coming from not being wounded.
Yeah. Yeah. And to go back to that feeling of the because it's the wounded masculine that doesn't feel like it's enough, right? And so if you can have that conversation with the mind to say, we're doing enough. Everything we're doing to get towards this thing that the heart is wanting to express, it's enough. And we're going to keep working towards it. We're going to keep working towards it. But to also say that to the masculine when you're in conversation, in relationship, like, hey, you're enough. I see there's potential for more here. I believe that you can do it. I believe it's in there, like it's within you to be able to do this. You are enough, but also there's this, and it creates, it can help soften that wounded masculine to see that it's not an attack. It's not, a beat up. It's an invitation for that wounded masculine to transform itself into the divine masculine.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're having that conversation in your head, you should have that conversation with your partner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're having that conversation of you think you're not enough or whatever, have that conversation. Because you're probably enough. Well, you're definitely enough. Everybody's enough. But we just need to be on the same page, right? It's like, talk about that and find that balance.
Yeah. I think, definitely talking about it, because essentially in a lot of relationships, people think if, we bring a problem to the table and we go, hey, there's this problem that's happening right now, we need to fix it, a lot of times people will go into the defense, like, I always do this wrong, or I never am enough, or whatever it might be. And that's often not the case. That's not what the person who's bringing the problem to the table is trying to say. They're just going, hey, there's a problem. It's no different than pointing to a smudge on the wall and going, we need to clean that. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the wall. It doesn't mean that there's a defect. It doesn't mean we need to destroy the wall. It's just, hey, there's a smudge on the wall. Let's get it cleaned up,
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's, just sitting here thinking, like, I didn't, I'm going to say I don't have a firm grasp on both divine masculine, divine feminine, and how that all looks. I have a good idea, and I didn't always have a good idea of how that looked. But through the last, I would say, year or so, that, discovering, reading, and this, that, and the other thing, and more so being with myself and thinking about how we communicate and how we communicate with our community and whatnot, has got me kind of curious to get to this point where, how does this work and why is this way? And it really opened my eyes up to the fact that, yeah, men and women have to understand that divine masculine and divine feminine within themselves.
Yeah.
Not saying, oh, you're divine feminine because you're a woman, and I'm divine masculine because I'm a man. You have to understand the mix within yourself and the mix within your partner, your community, and that it's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's through that understanding and just allowing yourself to get curious. Like, what does that look like for you? Because it's one thing for us to tell you about our experiences, about connecting with it and what that means for us. It's another thing for you to go and explore that for yourselves and to use your own experiences to kind of narrate that story, while also using your own experiences to really question what that story has been. Because there's a lot of indoctrination or teachings or learnings that we get, programmings that we get from a very young age as to what these gender roles are, what men and women are supposed to be. And I think sometimes in that we actually just naturally shut down the divine feminine that's trying to speak up, or the divine masculine that's trying to lead, and we just go, nope, that's not who I am because of these gender roles that I have. And when you can allow yourself to get curious, to dive into what your own experiences have been and dive into what really comes up within you when you think of the divine feminine, when you think of the divine masculine, and allowing yourself to really just get curious about it. And another aspect of it to me would be to look at your relationship with your mother, to look at your relationship with your father, because both of those are going to give you clues as to what programmings you received about what the feminine and what the masculine actually look like, what you believe it to be. So if you've had a very strong-willed, mother who often beat your father down, you might think divine feminine is a super empowered, rageful kind of Xena warrior princess energy. And that might not actually be your most divine truth that's wanting to come through you. Same with the divine masculine, with the father. If you had a very strong-willed father, you might think, for me to be a man, or for me to be in my masculine, would be, I need to be super angry all of the time, or I need to be, providing all of the time, in this kind of survival mode all of the time. And again, that's not necessarily true, because I question how many of our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and so forth, like going backwards, how many of them were connected with that divine masculine or that divine feminine within themselves and with each other.
Yeah. And I think that, we're not trying to beat down the teachings of the past or what it means or what we've been taught it means to be male, female, or masculine, feminine, whatever. It is, I think we've misconstrued those teachings over time.
Yeah.
And we're just getting to a point, and I think this is it's an evolution of human and the mind and whatnot. But it's still, remember, okay, yeah, this is what we called it, or this is what we were told we had to be, but that's just a suggestion. It's not a hard-coded, this is absolute what you have to be, right? And I think we, as a society and whatnot, have always taken it like the Bible. This is the word, this is how it has to be. And it's like, but really, was that what it was meant to be? Or was it meant to be something a little softer? Or was it meant to be something a little deeper? And we just took the bits and pieces that we recognized. And so I just wanted to make that comment that we're not like trying to take away from the past teachings of what it's like meant to be and this, that, and the other thing, but it's building on that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? Like, it is actually taking two and combining them and put them back into yourself and going, yes, you know what? You came from a male and you came from a female and you're both. And you need to realize that you have that communication within yourself that is both masculine and feminine. And you can have that in your body.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing wrong with it. You need to realize that has to be that way. It has to have that balance.
And that's part of that return to oneness within yourself, right? When you can create oneness with the divine masculine and the divine feminine within yourself, it's creating from, or taking from like two dualities, bringing them back to one within yourself. And then in that, you can start to have a deeper relationship again with those people around you. And if you can have a conversation with a partner, a loved one, someone about what does divine feminine and masculine mean to them, and wounded masculine, wounded feminine, I would encourage you to have these conversations, to explore it with your partner, to explore it in different relationship dynamics, to really kind of understand what is your own internal truths with that.
Well, and I would challenge any of the men or men that see this, show your feminine, show your emotions. Show that to your partner. Start thinking about these things, not just thinking about, I'm a guy and I have to do this. And no, you're a being of this earth and you have this inside of you.
Yeah.
Become whole.
Yeah. And then on the other side of that, if there's ladies who are watching this and their husbands are watching this, and the husbands go, you know what, I'm going to show my feminine. Ladies, I invite you to become that masculine for them, that you create that space. We're always talking about someone who holds a safe space for us. Ladies, create that for your men. Allow them to be soft, allow them to cry, allow them to be vulnerable, and be that strength for them. It's so interesting to me because...
Well, I was just going to say, I would do the exact opposite as well, as if females out there, show your masculine. Show the structure. You provide the structure. Let the masculine or the male provide the content. Just do it as an experiment. See what happens.
Yeah. Because it's a very interesting dance between the two. And what I had wanted to say was, I've seen so often, and I myself was this way as well, where I could see anybody cry, like any woman cry, and I would be completely safe with it. But to see a man cry, it just broke my heart so much that I couldn't even create that space for the man to be able to be vulnerable. Because I wasn't actually stepping into my masculine energy. I was in my feminine energy, trying to hold space for his feminine energy, and it would become this kind of weird wave of energy.
Yeah, you're assimilating, you're not supporting.
Yes. Where when you can go, okay, so he needs structure right now. He needs this soft space to be able to land, where he can start to sort out everything that's coming up for him. Then you allow him to really start to express himself. And there's so many women that I talk to who just want their men to open up, who just want their men to speak to them, who want their men to be more emotionally available. But we need to create the space for them to be able to do that without coming down hard on them. Like, you know, we don't want to yell at them. We don't want to stop them. We don't want to correct them. We don't want to do any of that. Just like we wouldn't want anyone to do that for us. You know, we just want to express ourselves. We don't want a solution to the problem. We just need to express.
Just
we need
provide the structure.
Yes.
We will provide the content. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just an invitation for you guys to kind of play with it and see how does it work within your relationship, and how does it work within your relationship with yourself. If you can understand that, you know, your mind is creating that structure for your heart to be able to express itself, how often do you let your mind tell you no? How often do you feel as though you're disappointed because you just can't do that thing that you truly want to do? Well, that's your mind kind of leading the way, but being too powerful to allow the heart to express itself. And so we want to have balance between the two.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing that I was just thinking about is creating art. There's a lot of people that, oh, I'm not artistic and I'm not whatever, if it's music or whatever you want to call it. Your heart wants to sing, your heart wants to create, but your mind lacks the ability to be able to, and I'm saying this as in I'm having the conversation in my own head, right? So your mind is saying, no, you can't draw, or you can't paint, or you can't play an instrument, but your heart's saying, oh, I want to do this. Still do it. It doesn't matter. Your heart wants to express that. Whether your brain can create the most beautiful, it's going to be beautiful no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always love to think of, like, when babies come into this world, nobody's taught them how to create art, how to sing, how to dance, none of that, right? But if you give, you know, a 1-year-old a crayon and some paper, they're going to create. And if you play music, they're going to start dancing. And a lot of times they'll start singing as well, because it's natural within every single one of us, across all cultures, across all genders, across everything, that when we're young, we all are creators. We all express ourselves in these beautiful ways. And throughout time, and we've raised enough kids that they get to 8 or 9 years old and they start really questioning, does this look good? You know, I can't sing anymore, or whatever. And it's the voice starts to kind of take over and go, it needs to be perfected before it can be shown to anybody else, or before it can even be expressed. I don't know how many people I talk to that are like, I would love to paint, I just don't know how. Well, we don't need to know how. It's just simply grab some paint and a brush and just start creating. And it's allowing that flow of the feminine to just come out of you, to be expressed.
Well, it's that harmonization of the both. And I thought that point that you made about being kids is great, because it's like when you're young, you don't have those biases and you don't care. So your heart and your brain are very much in sync, where it's like, I just want to play, I'm going to sing, I'm going to do whatever, I'm going to dance, da 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 da.
Yeah.
And everything is great. And then you get a little older, it's like, no, now, I want to do this, but I really don't know if it's going to look good. And you have all these other things, and just let it flow. Just let it flow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's essentially what it's all about. Whether it's within yourself or within a relationship, it's about getting to a place where it's more in that flow, where you're creating structure for that flow to be able to happen, where you're creating a space where both of you can express whenever you need to, and that you don't even need to think about, am I in the feminine or the masculine right now? But instead it becomes so natural that when their feminine starts to come up, you're just like, okay, I'm going to become this structure right now. When their structure starts to really come up, and then maybe it's a place for you to be able to go into the softening. And actually, if it's okay, I'm going to keep on talking. When we were at the Kyle Cease retreat,
Yes.
Or I guess it wasn't a retreat, just the
Kyle's,
weekend away.
Yeah.
I tend to be very emotional and very emotionally expressive, and you were very kind of
Reserved, yeah.
Very reserved, yes. Yeah. And when we went to that weekend, I found myself actually going within myself. I had a lot of stuff coming up, and I was really just feeling a lot. And when we came out outside for a break, he was being very expressive. And the more expressive he was, the more internalized I was becoming. And it was the very first time we actually seen this kind of new dynamic between us, because I'm usually talking as I am now. Perfect example of it. Um, but it was really a chance for your feminine. I never even thought of that before now. So I guess we've been working with this since
Oh, yeah.
2018, but didn't
Oh,
really recognize it till now.
I think that we've been working with this longer than that,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's. I think you'll start to see those little things, and you'll look back and go, oh. And what's even more interesting is you'll look back and go, there's a space where I could have been the structure, or I could have been the content, and you didn't. And yeah, you have to draw the line and go, okay, but going forward,
Yeah.
I mean, you have these ideas and these thoughts about this is how that balance or how this structure or how this harmony works. You'll start to realize, and it's like everything just becomes so easy. It's like, I know it's not like I have to worry, is this going to be there? It's going to be there.
Yeah.
Whether it's you providing the structure or me providing the structure, I know that we pick up on these cues, and it's not, I need to tell you this. It's just, you will take the role that you need to take, and I'll take the role that I need to take. And whatever happens, then we switch those roles whenever they switch or whatever. But
Yeah.
it is no. I think having the knowledge of that piece and having that awareness has it just brings a lot of strength to relationships and just a better understanding, better communication as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, we're in a very interesting kind of time right now. We have been for the past 12 to 14 years, I'd say. There's been a lot of energy shifts. There's been a lot of things that are changing in the world. And with that, it can be so easy for us to get kind of stuck in what our troubles are, what our problems are, and what's going on in the world around us and whatnot. And to me, if we can drop from our minds and all the things that we think about what the world is doing right now, what the world's got going on or whatever, and dividing ourselves from this person and that person and whatnot, and dropping into our hearts and really creating that space for our hearts to be able to explore, express, move through whatever emotions that we've got that are being triggered, holding that space for the emotions that are being triggered, and really focus on healing ourselves. That is the way that we need to move forward. That is how we start to shift the world, one person at a time. One emotional healing at a time, one trigger at a time, whatever way you want to look at it. And there's an old story. I don't know exactly where the story stems from, but essentially there's a little boy on a beach, and there's hundreds of stranded starfish on the beach. Yeah. And the little boy is picking up a starfish, and he's throwing it back into the ocean, and picking up another one and throwing it back into the ocean. And this man comes along, and he says to this little guy, you're never going to be able to save them all. And he picks up another starfish, the little boy, and he throws it back in the ocean. And he said, well, I saved that one. And so I don't think we don't need to, get to the finish line right away. It's every day that you're showing up and you're going, okay, what is it my heart's needing today? That is how we can start to shift this world. And what does that have to do with the feminine? It's about getting into your heart. It's about allowing that heart to be expressed, and whatever pain has been there, whatever your life experiences have been, whatever things you haven't been able to heal yet, allow yourself, invite yourself to get in there and feel it and move through it, process it, talk to someone about it, work with a therapist, book with an energy healer, whatever it might be that works for you, to allow yourself to get in there, get that heart space cleared up, so that the feminine can really start to express itself.
Yeah, I thought this is kind of interesting, and I don't want to say something like cleared up, because it's always work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But just for me, it wasn't about looking at the finish line. It was just getting started and realizing and being okay with all these things. And it's like, wow, once you feel that, it just, it does, it's always going to be work, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and I don't even like to call it work at this
Well,
point in time.
it's always a process. It's always a journey, right?
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say was that you look at the world that we're in right now. There's a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of... So that's kind of the structure that we're put in all involuntarily.
Yeah.
The things that we can do and the things that we're doing as we're having these conversations with you is we're trying to provide the content. We're trying to provide those relationships or better that content. We can't control what the structure is, but we can control the content. We can control ourselves. We can control how we communicate to each other and how we communicate with you and with our neighbors and our community.
Yeah.
And sure, the structure can be as rough and as whatever it wants to be, but we can provide better content inside it. We don't have to look at the structure and be all depressed and all upset that all these bad things are happening. We don't have to. We don't have to buy into that.
Yeah. And it's really an invitation if you find yourself, kind of getting bombarded by the stuff that's happening in that structure. It's really an invitation for you to go into your heart and feel what is coming up. And I know I said about clearing things, and that's just terminology I use from some of the energy work that I do. But to me, it's every time you go into your heart and you clear something, it's like throwing one more starfish back into the ocean. And yeah, there might be another million starfish, within your heart on the beach or whatever, but it's just one at a time. And eventually things do start to feel a little bit lighter. Doesn't mean there's not going to be another starfish that ends up on the beach, but you can, go over to that one and help it and save it, throw it back into the ocean. I don't know that there will ever be a finish line. I would love to tell you that, hey, there's a finish line. We're all going to arrive at this one place eventually, and we're going to get there, and we're going to all celebrate, and perhaps we all will. That is my greatest intent for each of us. But let's enjoy the journey along the way and not look at it as I have to heal this, or whatever. Yes. But I get to heal this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that when you get to that comfortable place of, oh, I get to do this. I get to go deeper into myself to see where this leads or where this came from or whatever. That is the place.
Yeah.
That is the place we all need to be.
Or we invite you all to come to.
Yeah, well, that is really healing ourselves, right? Is if we're all in that place where we're excited about knowing our wounds or knowing that we're working towards this and we're all collectively in that space.
Yeah.
Oh, that is...
Yeah, that's the finish line, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that might be coming to an end for tonight.
Yeah, I would, I'd like to, we talked about this earlier and would like to have the conversation with you folks. We're always looking for questions or add to the conversation. Like I said, we can talk. Well, you can talk. I can try to talk. Sometimes I get a little lost, but it's always nice to have that communication and have that conversation with others. So by all means, reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody who's joined us tonight, everybody who's watching the replay, and we look forward to connecting with you next Sunday right here on Facebook as we continue to create conscious relationships. Have a great night, everyone.
Take care.